Welcome, everybody, to the expertly produced and award-winning RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast. It is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. It's Friday, December 15th, 2023. Alex Barutha here with Shannon McEwen and Ken K-Train Kreitz.
All aboard!
Let's jump right into the news. Last night, the Clippers beat the Warriors 121-113 in LA. Paul George was out for this game, bit of a day-to-day injury. This was Draymond, more notably, Draymond Green's first game serving his indefinite suspension. We had Brandin Podziemski and Jonathan Kuminga join the starting lineup because Andrew Wiggins was benched by Coach Steve Kerr.
Well, he should be.
Air Pods did not play that well. 2 for 11, 3 turnovers, did grab 7 rebounds. We also had James Harden continuing his strong play, posting 28 points, 15 assists, 7 rebounds in 42 minutes.
Is that just to get him less fat, the 42 minutes?
Maybe. They should play him 48. But yeah, I mean, Shannon, we, the fantasy community has been like, is it Kuminga? Is it Sarge? Is it Podziemski? Is it Moody? Does anything you saw from this game make you feel strongly about any of those guys?
I mean, I'm going to lean most heavily on minutes and also the fact that AirPods and Kuminga entered into the starting lineup. Like, that's the biggest news, right? Yeah. Yep. So those two starting make them the two obvious pickups for me. There were two guys we're going to talk about both guys later. Those were the two guys I was planning on calling out either way. But there's going to be other fallout from the Draymond suspension. I mean, one, we don't even know how long Draymond's out for. So to be determined. It could have been a short-term ad, a long-term, to be determined. But you've got Kevon Looney. He had a decent game.
Let me back up to that, Shannon. It was 8 games for strangling Gobert, right? So it doesn't have to be at least 8 games. Oh, it's 5. Oh, okay. 8 days, maybe 5 games. Okay.
I mean, yes, it'll be. I would assume it's at least 5 games, right?
Yeah.
So, and Draymond's history will come into play. But it could be anywhere from my personal take is I wouldn't be surprised if it's 5 games again. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 25 games. To be determined, right? But right now, you've got AirPods. He entered the starting lineup, basically received the start over Andrew Wiggins, who was
over
benched.
Over Chris Paul, too.
Over Chris Paul, yeah. But Wiggins was the guy in the starting lineup, and then Kuminga starting as well. We'll say that he took Draymond's place in the starting lineup. I am surprised that Chris Paul did not earn a start, but he still played 20 minutes off the bench, 12 points, 3 assists, 2 rebounds. I think you've got Chris Paul is going to see a nice boost with Draymond out. Kevon Looney, a nice boost. He had 8, 7, and 5 last night in 26 minutes. Looney's had a lot of games where he hasn't even topped 20 minutes. So I think we'll see him play 25, 26 minutes on a much more regular basis with Draymond out. And then Kuminga and
and don't leave out Dario Saric. He played well during Green's last suspension. Didn't have a particularly notable game last night, but I think Saric and his size, they're going to need him with Green out. One thing also about AirPods, I didn't put this in the notes. Sorry, Alex, but he also had 4 stocks. And Pods hustles on defense, which I'm sure the Warrior coaches have noticed. I think they're going to like his, active hands, and he's freaking out. He's always moving around excessively on defense. 4 stocks last night, if 3 steals, 1 block. I like the stocks from Pods as far as debating your pickups here.
Ken, let's go to an upset victory.
Yeah, Bulls upset the Heat in Miami, 124-116. Fantasy darling Kobe White with 26 points. Shot 4 of 11 from behind the arc. 11 dimes, so he wasn't just gunning. And I love this, 0 turnovers. He had a Halliburton game. Double-digit assists with 0 turnovers. DeRozan had 23 points. Vucevic had 24 points. Gentlemen, are the Bulls better without Zach LaVine? They're 5-2 during LaVine's foot injury absence and have wins over the Heat, Pelicans, and Bucks.
They might be. I mean, it's just awesome that Coby White is getting an opportunity. I think he's kind of been underserved since he joined the NBA in terms of opportunities, being pigeonholed into a bench role. So it's good to see him get out there and do some stuff. Are they better without LaVine? I mean, I don't think LaVine was giving his best effort. Let's put it that way. And this is allowing them to go a little more defensive focused. Coby White, his shooting's going to pull back a little bit, but a little more Pat Williams, Caruso, Torrey Craig, Dosunmu. Like, those guys are all good defenders, right? So they can kind of lean on DeRozan, Vucevic, and White, and lean some more defense. And they could, I mean, it was an upset victory against the Heat, but the Heat are also extremely shorthanded right now.
No Bam.
No Bam. But yeah, I mean, in terms of fantasy, Shannon, is there anything going on, do you think, in Chicago that we still need to act on? Or is it just like, obviously you have to roster Coby White in every league, Pat Williams, maybe still like it's soft ad in like 12 team leagues kind of a situation?
Yeah. Similar to past weeks when we discussed it. I mean, Alex Caruso would be an option, but he's been in and out of the lineup. Seems like every single game, even when he does play, he ends up leaving early because of injury. But you just, again, I'm going to lean heavily on minutes played, starting lineup. Pat Williams, 32 minutes last night. Coby White, 40 minutes. Coby White's been an absolute beast for, basically the past 2 weeks. And it's wild to me because even like on the DFS side of it, looking at Coby White, I imagine Coby White, what's Coby White's roster percentage right now?
It's got to be in the 80s.
Yeah. Let's confirm that while I'm talking. But on the DFS side, with Coby White, he has been a walking 40, 45 fantasy points, hitting 50 some nights, and he hasn't topped out. He hasn't reached $8,000 salary yet on FanDuel or DraftKings. Like, he's been a must plug in, the first option I've plugged into my lineup the past 6-7 days, anytime the Bulls are on the slate. And it's wild to me. He's always, his roster percentage is always very low, under 10%. I think he was probably around 7 or 8% on both sites last night. I don't understand that. As long as he's below 8,000, I think he's a must start in DFS.
He's managed in 81% of season-long Yahoo leagues.
Too low.
Way too low.
I got to say, tip of the hat to Dosunmu last night. Shot 10 of 12. That won't happen every night. But 24 points, 8 boards, 5 assists, had a steal in there. It's not going to happen every night, but nice to see.
A good call out, Ken, because I agree. I mean, he had 35 minutes. That was largely due to Alex Caruso leaving the game after 5 minutes of action. But Dosunmu, he pulled a Tony Snell the other night, had zeros across the board despite playing like close to 30 minutes. That shouldn't deter folks. If you're in a deep enough league, especially if Alex Caruso does miss some more time, Dosunmu is worth a flyer. He's going to have some duds. He reminds me of he's very much like a Terrence Mann type option where he's going to have just total duds for games, but pop off every once in a while and probably provide enough value, especially in like 4-game weeks for deeper 14 team leagues, maybe deep rostered 12 teamers as well.
Alex, take us to the news out of Utah.
Yeah, this isn't like breaking news, but we have Jordan Clarkson's out for 2 weeks in Utah. Keontae George also to be reevaluated after this road trip. He avoided a serious injury, got an MRI, but it's still of concern that they were worried enough to get an MRI. Clearly he was in pain, not feeling well. Somehow the Jazz still get a decisive 122-114 win over Portland. I say decisive because it was garbage time in the fourth. Should note Scoot Henderson went for a 20-10 game in a lot of that garbage time.
2 straight for him.
2 straight.
2 straight solid outings.
So Markkanen and Collins were also out in this game. This was the first time all year Portland was favored in a basketball game, and yet they lost. We had Collin Sexton play 32 minutes, 27 points on 17 shots, 4 assists, 2 rebounds, and 1 steal. We had Taylor Horton-Tucker, 23 points on 19 shots, 4 assists, 4 steals, 2 rebounds. Chris Dunn got in a little bit, 6 points and 5 assists. And Ochai Agbaji, 16 points. We know Clarkson's out for 2 weeks. The Keontae George situation's a little iffy. I hesitate to say Sexton and Taylor Horton-Tucker and Dunn are like must-add players because we don't know.
I'll say it! Sexton's a must-add. We'll get to that in the free agent picks.
All right.
It's only taken a year and a half, but we've been due. It's due. We are due.
It's sexy time.
Breakout.
That settles it, everybody. I would say, okay, so maybe the bigger question is, do you, because people ask about this actually on Nick and I's Monday pod a lot, do you drop Keontae George? And I've been pretty firm. I don't think you drop Keontae George in 12-team leagues despite the shooting percentage struggles.
I mean, I would drop him for Sexton only because the field goal percentage from George has been consistently high 30%, and he shot the same in college. So I keep hoping that field goal percentage for George turns around, but I don't think it's going to happen.
I think he's a hold. A lot of folks held him prior to his ascension to the starting lineup for the Jazz, and even before the December 13th game against the Knicks, when he left with that injury, he had his best game of the season, 44 fantasy points, 30 points, 7 assists, 3 rebounds, 5 3-pointers made, 5 from 9 from downtown. I'm holding them. The latest news is avoid serious injury. That's the headline. So you have to miss him this weekend, but hopefully he's back in short order next week.
I in the chat, Brooks Durham says he's holding on to George because he's already punting field goal percentage. Absolutely. That is the right call. So we try to provide blanket advice, right? But understand it depends on your league, what you're punting, what your build is, stuff like that. So that's a good note. Ken, let's go to the Spurs.
Yeah, Zach Collins has gotten the boot out of the starting lineup so that Victor Wembanyama can play center. In 3 games since Wemby started playing center, 22 points, 17 rebounds, 5 blocks, 3 assists, 1.3 steals, and 1.7 triples. He almost carried them to the win 2 nights ago. Shoot, who was that? Was that against the Clippers? I can't remember.
Lakers.
But Lakers, yes. I was LA, yes. Spurs, though, as we just implied, have lost all those games still. In fact, they're on some kind of crazy losing streak. I don't know if they're in Pistons territory yet, but they got to be close. And they've lost those 3 games by an average of almost 8 points. Wemby is now up to the 15th ranked player in 8 category leagues for total season stats. Meanwhile, fantasy darling Zach Collins with his bench time over those 3 games, averaging only 8 points, 5.3 rebounds, and just under 19 minutes a game.
Yeah, it's awesome we're seeing Wembanyama play at least what I consider to be his true position at center. Will they play Trey Jones at his true position and start him at point guard? No. But to me, this is bigger news for Collins. Obviously, I mean, he's been fine. I would prefer to hold him in 12-team leagues because we know he's good per minute. But I understand if you are struggling in your league and this happens and you just need stats. I understand wanting to drop Collins because I don't think they're going back to starting him. But if you're in a position of strength in your league, I would prefer to hold Collins.
I think the play here is if you're a Wemby manager to buy Collins now on the cheap to have him handcuff Wemby because I still feel like that injury's coming. Anyway, that's my advice.
It is tough. I roster Collins in a few spots. In our stake league, I have him. I believe that's a 14-team league.
16, right?
16. Yeah, 16.
Yeah, you got to keep him there.
I'm keeping him there. He's probably going to be on my bench most weeks. But most of the waiver wire options that we highlight on a weekly basis are not available in that league. So I'm going to keep him there. But if it's a 10 or 12 teamer, especially with shallow benches in a 12 teamer, 10 team, absolutely dump them off, find a different top 120 piece. There's probably someone who's got some short-term value that's worth streaming in. But even 12 teamers, if it's a short bench, I feel the same way. I think Zach Collins is disposable.
Well said. Well said. Alex, tell us about our friends at Underdog.
I would love to. Underdog Fantasy. It's the #1 fantasy platform for NBA best ball and DFS player pick'em contests. If you haven't tried Underdog yet, new Underdog users receive a first-time deposit bonus up to $100 and a free 6-month subscription to RotoWire with promo code RWNBA. That's promo code RWNBA. And I should note, with that free 6-month RotoWire subscription, you will get access to our new picks page, which I don't have the link on me handy, but I think it's just rotowire.com/picks, if I'm not mistaken. And that's a good way to access some nice, if you're playing a pick'em contest, you see what the other books are doing, over, under, you got to check the page out. It's awesome. Again, visit underdogfantasy.com or download the Underdog app today and use promo code RWNBA to claim your free RotoWire subscription and deposit bonus.
That's code RWNBA. Gentlemen, well, it's time for the fan feedback. Let's go to questions from the comments. I'm just going to hit show on one here. I just traded away Markkanen, Kuzman, and Melton for Sengun and Tatum. Can you rate this trade?
That's an interesting trade. I think I'm good with the Sengun Tatum side. I think that's a fine trade.
You got the two best players in the deal. Markkanen's fantastic when he's healthy, but he hasn't been that this year. I think Utah is going to be selling at some point. If Markkanen gets moved to a different team, especially if it's a contender, it's very unlikely that he'll be option 1A for any team he gets traded to, right? Like even if it's a team like the Pistons, let's just talk this into existence for a minute. Let's say the Pistons trade for Markkanen. I still put him as the number 2 option behind Cade in that scenario. So even if it's a struggling team, or San Antonio, same thing, right? Wemby would be option A. So I love Sengun and Tatum. I think that side gets the 2 best players in the deal, and it frees up a roster spot for you where you can stream in a hot pickup each week.
Did I say Kuzman? Yeah, Kuzma. Yeah. Sorry about that. A little panic there reading the notes. Tatum, are you kidding me? Come on, top 5 player, never gets hurt. That's the trade. All right, next question. Is Karis LeVert a long-term 10-team or 12-team ad?
I'm okay with the idea of adding him in 12s just because we know his upside when Mitchell and Garland miss time. And also, Cleveland's bench, I don't have a ton of faith in general. I think LeVert's going to continue to play 6-man minutes. I don't know in a 10 team you need to add him because I think a lot of times there's guys off the waiver wire who are mostly doing the same stuff. So it's fine for 12. Yeah.
Anything to add, Shannon?
No, I agree. I think he's a 12-teamer, much more than a 10-teamer. 10-teamers got to be pretty deep rosters to have LeVert in there. He's going to pop off, right? In that bench role, especially when the Cavs are shorthanded with Garland or Mitchell missing time. Mobley is out right now, which is part of the reasons why maybe LeVert had a big game last night. But I don't think he's a must roster in 10-teamers. 12 probably.
All right, one last one about news in Utah. If John Collins is getting traded, will Taylor Hendricks be a must-add? I'm thinking elsewhere on that depth chart, but what do you guys think?
I don't know if Hendricks will be a must-add. I mean, if John Collins or Markkanen, we should say, got traded, because I think both those guys are. I don't know what their willingness to trade Collins is, but yeah. I mean, I
wouldn't. I'm going to mispronounce this name, but wouldn't Fontecchio help me out here?
Fontecchio. Yeah, he's just not that good or interesting. Like
he's Kelly Olynyk's like younger brother, play wise, stats wise. Yeah.
Look, I wouldn't personally. This isn't exactly what you're asking, but I think in a way it's like, hey, is Taylor Hendricks a stash? If I'm in a 14-team league or something like that, do I try to stash Taylor Hendricks? I don't think you do, but I'm interested to see what you think, Shannon.
I'm going to come up on the other side of that. In a 14-teamer, yes, I do think he's a stash. In the likely, because Collins, there's been a lot of trade buzz with Collins the last couple of days. So, I think it makes sense for Utah to trade him. I think that's one of the reasons why they acquired Collins. They thought it's a low cost acquisition that we're getting here. We'll see if it works. If it doesn't, we'll find a different destination for him. That's another guy. Let's talk it into existence here. The Detroit Pistons should trade for John Collins. I'm okay with that.
They need another big man?
They need a big man who can put it on the floor a little bit and hit threes. I know what John Collins does, and I know that he does it better than Isaiah Stewart. So yes, the answer is yes. They do need John Collins. So Hendricks, but evaluating Hendricks, he did get recalled from the G League back on December 2nd. He's been in the rotation for the Jazz since then. So over the past 6 games, he's averaging 21 minutes off the bench, 6 points, 2.8 rebounds. He had 10 and 7 last night with a steal. 2 for 5 from downtown, which might have been one of his bigger question marks, is can he stretch the floor this soon in his career? I'm a big fan of Hendricks. I like his potential on the defensive side to rack up stocks. 14 team, I think he's worth a stash. If Collins gets moved, I think he's worth a stash in 12 teamers. All that said, if it comes to a point where he is put into the starting lineup at some point, then yes, he's a must-add.
I might scoop up the clinic. I might go for Olynyk if a trade is done there, but we shall see.
Sure.
All right, gentlemen, it's now time for the big money segment, the waiver wire section. Alex, take us there.
Like you said, it is the big money segment. This is how this works. We each have 2 regular waiver wire picks that are rostered in less than 50% of leagues, and then 1 long shot pick rostered in less than 25% of leagues. In terms of scheduling next week, not as busy as this week, but still only 1 team has 2 games, and that is the Phoenix Suns. So keep that in mind. Every other team obviously plays 3 or 4. My first suggestion for the waiver wire is Dante Exum, a name I thought I would never speak again in my entire life.
How old do you think he is, by the way?
How old do I think he is?
I had to look this up because in my head he's always like 19 years old.
I'm not looking it up. He's 28.
He is 28. Bam,
wow.
Alex, way to go.
Honest to God, that was a complete shot in the dark.
Yeah.
So Kyrie Irving is in a walking boot after that injury Kyrie suffered. He is lucky that was not like season or career ending. That was crazy when Dwight Powell fell on him like that. But over the past 5 games, Exum has been in the starting lineup, averaging 17 points, 5 assists, 5 rebounds, and a steal. Now he's shooting 59% from the field. And he's shooting 57% from 3. Those are going to come down. Like for his career, he's like a 30% 3-point shooter in the NBA. But then last year he's in Europe and he shot like 37, 38%. Now he's back in the league and he's out of control shooting hot. But
he went to Europe a boy and he came back a man.
He did. He actually gained a lot of weight. He's physically, he's pretty imposing. Really he's a good defender as well. I think he's a good addition to their lineup. The Mavs are on a 4-game week, right? So even if his shooting comes down a little bit, you're doing well. He can pass, he can defend. 42% roster on Yahoo. I don't know if I said that. To me, he's got to be an ad. We don't know how long Kyrie is out for.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And frankly, they've been struggling to figure out who the wings should be on this team. Yeah. Why not Exum? He's playing out of his head. Love it.
Who is who? Oh, yeah, go ahead, Shannon.
I do. With Exum, the big question mark for me is what happens when Kyrie returns. So 5 straight starts, some of those with Kyrie. But Grant Williams was out for a little stretch there. Yet Derek Jones Jr. missed a game or 2. Last night, Derek Jones Jr. and Grant Williams both played. So you had Exum essentially play the 2. He had logged some minutes at the 3 as a starter previously. So what happens when Kyrie returns? Do they move Derek Jones Jr. or Grant Williams to the bench and keep Exum in the starting lineup? I think it's possible because he's been so damn good. But it is something to watch. He might only end up being a short-term ad. Definitely worth an ad, though.
All right. Exum's a nice, cute ad. But the big ad is the big sexy, boys. Collin Sexton. We've only been preaching this for a year and a half, but it's finally happened. Finally happening. Sexton's just about to explode. He's 54% rostered on Yahoo, 32% on ESPN. As we mentioned in the news section, Clarkson's out for at least 2 weeks. Keontae George, we don't know yet. Waiting on that MRI results. He could be out for a while. Last night in Portland, Sexton got his second start in a row. 27 points, 2 rebounds, 4 assists. Hit 2 threes while shooting 11 of 17 from the field over 32 minutes. Great to see. We don't know which forwards are getting traded from this team. Whoever gets dealt will mean more shots for Sexton. But it's not just last night. Sexton over the last 7 games, almost 19 points, over 4 assists, while shooting over 54% from the field, and elite free throw shooting 94%. Utah has 4 games next week, so take the big sexy dive and give Collin Sexton a try, baby.
I think that's a good note. Yeah. I mean, it's again, we don't know about George. He's worth an ad until we know. And even if he does come back, let's say 2 games into the week, Sexton should still do enough in those next 2 games with Clarkson out to make it worth your while. Shannon, where are you going for your first waiver wire ad?
Well, we hinted at it previously, and my first ad and my second ad are both going to come from the Warriors. Brandin Podziemski, AirPods. We were going to recommend him as a pickup even before he was announced as a starter last night. Prior to last night's game, 5 games preceding that, he averaged 12 points, 7.2 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 stock per game, 1.6 3-pointers, solid percentage. Well, solid field goal percentage. Free throw, only 33% over that stretch, but he's not taking many free throws at this stage of his career, so it's not going to be too damaging. I love me some AirPods. I think he's an electric player. He's fun to watch. He fits the Warriors system well. I would not be surprised if he's even, whether he's starting or not, over that 5-game stretch as a non-starter, was still seeing 28 minutes per. I think he's going to see heavy minutes, that 25 to 30 range, even if he ends up coming off the bench again in the near future. He is worth a pickup in most 12-team leagues, definitely in 14-team leagues. He's rostered in about 30% of leagues, a little bit above that right now. Go scoop him up.
Very nice, well-rounded player, like you mentioned. 14 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists per 36. Also averaging a steal there, about 0.9 fantasy points per minute. So if he's getting 30 minutes, he's rosterable in 12-team points leagues as well as category leagues.
I think his stocks are going to be awesome. He's a super hustled defensive guy.
Mm-hmm. My second waiver wire suggestion is my man, Tari Eason. I've been waiting so long to say this name. He is on, I really need to make like an Alex Barutha sort of like fantasy. I don't even know, like my guys. Because it's like
he was the video cover guy at least once last season. At least once. I think a couple times.
It's exciting for one of your guys to actually be good.
I know.
Ouch.
Tari Eason, Naz Reid, other guys along these lines are some of my favorites. Eason, 34% rostered in Yahoo leagues. The past 2 games, these are his totals: 43 points, 28 rebounds, 3 steals, 2 assists, and a block in 54 minutes. Look, we saw it last year, what he could do per minute. There's a reason people were drafting Eason in the back end of probably their deeper league drafts this season. Per 36 this year, he's averaging 16 and 13 with 2 assists. I think it's 2 steals and a block, or 2 blocks and a steal. I don't know why I didn't write down which was which. But Houston also plays 4 games this week. So if you have any concerns about his minutes, maybe only play 17 a game because a men's back and guys are healthy, I think you can still get value because, again, per minute, he's crazy. And with the upside of him playing closer to 25 minutes a game, to me, you just got to add him while he's hot.
Stop playing Jeff Green, Houston. He's 110 years old. There is no future in Jeff Green. Stop it.
Oh, man. All right, Ken, who's your second ad?
Isaiah Hartenstein, backup center for your New York Knicks. 45% rostered in Yahoo. Mitchell Robinson is out until early February. Now, this happened last year, and last year they started Sims, but Hartenstein would always get more minutes. In the last 5 games, Hartenstein, a little over 6 points, but 9 rebounds and almost 1.5 blocks while shooting 55% from the field. The Knicks have only 3 games next week. This is more of a 2-center league if you need a third center for a few weeks. Hartenstein, probably limited upside, but actually passes well for a center too. Anyway, I like him backup center in 2-center leagues.
Yeah, Hartenstein absolutely worth a pickup in deep 12 teamers, 14 teamers, shallower formats, I'm staying away. We've all been waiting for the Hartenstein breakout forever. It's never going to happen, like a true breakout from Hartenstein. Even last year when Mitch Robb was out, what did the Knicks do? They brought in Taj Gibson. Guess who they just re-signed?
Taj Gibson. I want to know, can someone tell us what Taj was doing? What was 38-year-old Taj Gibson doing the last few months? I picture him in a suit selling insurance. What do you think his job
was? Like tending to a garden or something, just like completely relaxed. And
or
then
just tomatoes. Yeah.
Right. Hartenstein's another one of my guys who would be on my list. And yeah, I don't know.
I like to think of Tibbs showing up like in a Honda Civic with a giant Knicks sticker on, like, get in!
I'll tell you what the guy who has over $86 million in career earnings was doing for the past 6 months. Not selling cars.
Not a damn thing.
Yeah. Enjoying life.
Working his garden. Exactly. All right, Shannon, who's yours? Second pick.
Yeah, as hinted at, another Warrior, Jonathan Kuminga, 21-year-old forward for Golden State. Kuminga started playing very solid even before the Draymond suspension. In the previous 5 games, he had played 22 minutes off the bench, averaged 15 points, 5 rebounds, 1 stock, 58% from the floor, hitting 1.6 3-pointers. His 3-point shot definitely looks, it looks more true this year, especially in the last couple of weeks, than it has in past seasons. I think this is the opportunity Kuminga needs. He's had similar opportunities in the past, but the fact that he was already getting priority minutes over Andrew Wiggins before Draymond Green's suspension, now he's in the starting lineup. I do like him better in points-based leagues than rotisserie leagues. But if it's 12-teamer or deeper, I am scooping up Kuminga and hoping that he can seize this role and hold on to close to 30 minutes per night long-term with these Warriors.
Could you see the Warriors dealing Kuminga, Moody, maybe some picks to get either Collins or Markkanen?
I could see that.
Maybe. What they should do, if they aren't making a deal like that, they should just move on. It's time to hand over the reins to the young guys in Curry. Get rid of Draymond, get rid of Clay. But Warriors fans don't want to hear that, and they're going to think I'm crazy.
All right, Alex, who's your long shot of the week?
It's another one of my guys, Matisse Thybulle.
This is the opposite of Big Sex.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If I put together an actual NBA roster of my guys, they'd win more games than the Pistons, but still not very many games.
Wemby has one more win than the Pistons. All right.
That's true.
I don't want to hear it. The Savior has one more win than the Pistons. The Pistons, if based on that measure alone, the Pistons are overperforming.
I'm surprised we don't get more comments. Stop talking about the Pistons.
Yeah. Well, no one else is, so it's a bit of a safe space.
But let's get to your big, not sexy pick for a long shot here.
Yeah, look, they only have 3 games next week. This is not really like a short-term ad necessarily. Ken's falling asleep. This is more of a long-term, deeper league play because he's 19% rostered in Yahoo leagues right now. Look, last game is not a good example because he played 17 minutes because Portland got blown out by a Utah team. But over the past 2 weeks, he's ranked 91st. And we know we know who Matisse Thybulle is. He's hitting threes a little more this season. His 3-point shooting actually at 42% this year. He's hitting a 3.5 per game, but 1.5 steals, 0.7 stocks in 24 minutes. He's playing more than that lately. He started the past 3 games. If you're in a 16-team league, you just have to roster him. I'm sorry to break it to everybody. You have to roster him.
Well, I'm embarrassed to say I have a pick almost as boring as yours, Alex. I also couldn't think of a fun long-term pick, so I just went safe. With Taurean Prince of the Lakers, he's only managed in 13% of leagues. Lakers do have 4 games next week, unlike Thybulle's 3. And, hey, last 3 games, almost 16 points, 4 rebounds, almost 5 triples while shooting 59%. Look, is he going to stay that hot? No, of course not. But he might for a few more games next week. Lakers have 4. If your roster's got too many 3 games, guys, or even a Phoenix Sun on it, this might be the time to just stream Prince for a week or 2.
Yeah, we started the waiver wire section with some very sexy picks, literally.
Yeah. Now we're like,
and now I'm going to wrap it up with
apartment complex.
The third non-sexy option, Malaki Branham, San Antonio Spurs. He's part of that new look starting lineup for the Spurs. Branham has started 8 of the past 9 games, but he's picked up his production in the past 3. Over the latest 3 games, he is averaging 28 minutes, 14 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, and 1.3 3-pointers. I don't think Branham has much upside, but he can help out in points, in 3-pointers, enough that he could be an option in 14-teamers and very deep 12-teamers. But I would not even consider him in shallower 12-teamers or 10-team leagues.
I mean, I think he's going to keep getting minutes because his defense has been really good, but fantasy-wise, we'll see. We shall see. Any drops? You guys want to suggest any drops? I see some names here in the notes.
Yeah, I mean, some of these names are guys that we've had questions about in other streams. Interesting names. We talked about Zach Collins already. Shannon and I discussed that, but if you missed the first part of the show, I think he's a hold in probably 14-team or 16-team leagues. 12s, if you're playing well, you can hold him. If not, I understand if you want to drop. Other 2 names, Dylan Brooks is on here. We get questions about him. To me, he's a drop. I wrote an article early in the year. I think in like 3 articles, I was begging people to sell high. I'm like, you have to take literally any player that you can get back for Dylan Brooks from somebody else. But my question to you, Shannon, and this is a much more difficult question than the Dylan Brooks. Jalen Green. We're waiting. We're still waiting, patiently waiting. Is it time to maybe drop him?
No, I'm holding Green.
Okay.
At least for a little bit longer. The Rockets are just lucky. They have a lot of young players who are showing out, and Green's had some struggles, but I am holding on to Green. I mean, he just had a 47 fantasy point outing a couple weeks ago. He's in a little bit of a rough stretch shooting the last handful of games, but I expect that to bounce back. The real question is, will he ever be more than a points guy? Which I question, because he doesn't do anything over the past 5 games. While his shot has been broke, he has 0 steals and 0 blocks as well. So, and he's only averaging about 2 assists per game in that stretch. So if he's not scoring, is he going to be doing other things? It's unlikely at this stage. Hopefully that changes, but I am holding him. I have a different drop, despite being locked into the starting lineup, and despite our audience likely desire to have us not talk about the Pistons. It's time. It is time to drop Beef Stew, Isaiah Stewart, for the Pistons. The Pistons have switched up their starting lineup some, and Beef Stew has moved to the starting 5. Jalen Duren's out. Marvin Bagley's out. So that's part of the reason why they've done that. But I do believe that Stewart will not be long for the Pistons starting lineup. And even in his starts, looking at we'll stretch it out and look at the past 8 games. He's averaging 8 points and 6.1 rebounds with half a stock, 0.4 steals, 0.1 blocks. He is not conducive.
Who's arguing with Shannon on this? Where's the pro Beef Stew?
He's still rostered in over 50% of leagues. So
that's crazy.
I feel, and like, he is locked into the starting lineup, and that's one of the biggest barometers for, is this guy worthy of a starting lineup? Is he getting the minutes with Beef Stew? Yeah, he's getting the minutes. He's in the lineup, but he's not productive enough. And I do think this team, we might even see James Wiseman enter the starting lineup at some point, but definitely when Duren returns, I think Stewart's out. He's going to be a backup big man for this team, and you're going to have Azar Thompson. It's good news for Azar Thompson. It's good news for Bogdanovich. Some of these other guys, I expect the Pistons will go with a smaller lineup than they did previously when Duren or Bagley were healthy.
Yeah, I'm sorry. What's that, Pete? Tell Shannon to stop talking about the Pistons. Yeah, I'll get on that. Thank you. Let's go to Shannon's other real core strength, which is not necessary, in addition to Pistons talk, is his fabulous DFS advice. I don't want to brag for Shannon, but I'm gonna. He's been flashing us big money winnings lately. I don't know why he's shaking his head. He should be very proud of how well he's done lately. We got an 8-game slate tonight, Friday, December 15th. Gentlemen, dive into your DFS advice.
Yeah, we don't have like as many major injuries as sometimes we do, but we got to note AD and LeBron. Obviously, they're questionable. Baines, questionable. Jordan Poole is questionable. Mark Williams is doubtful. And I just want to note this Mark Williams thing. The Hornets love to use the doubtful tag when a guy is going to be out like a month or 2 months. And they just waived Theo Maledon, a guard, and picked up a center off of free agency. So I'll just keep that in mind. Maybe a little Nick Richards off the waiver wire. We didn't mention his name, but if you're trying to be a little sneaky and you're in a deep league, maybe a little Nick Richards, see what's going on there.
And new fans of the show should know that Alex every day is updating all the injury news. So when he talks about a team's injury behavior, he is the expert at RotoWire of teams not giving good info.
Yeah, I hate the Hornets. Okay, Shannon, on this slate, where's the first place you turn?
We can stick with Nick Richards, honestly.
Okay.
I mean, with Williams out, Richards will be an option. He's been kind of frustrating on the DFS side because not a ton of production, even in the most. I mean, he's started 2 or 3 games in a row now, maybe 4, and he's seeing some minutes. The most recent game, you had PJ Washington leave early because of an injury, and PJ Washington is questionable for tonight as well. So that's something to keep an eye on. But in that game, without Williams and with Washington leaving early, Nick Richards played 40 minutes. If he sees anything close to that tonight, then it'll be very hard for him not to return value for a DFS slate. He's at 5,400 on DraftKings and 5,400 on FanDuel as well. It was nice. He gets blocks, he gets rebounds. It's kind of a matter of, is he going to score enough? Which he hasn't been doing a ton of, 6 points in each of the past 2 games. But at 5,400, there is upside where like he's going to put it all together, see 30 plus minutes, get a double with a couple blocks, and provide solid value. So he's one of my favorite big men to target for tonight's slate.
Is there anything you could tell us about this Pistons 76ers game, Shannon, or is this just sad?
Hey, all right, I will risk my job to talk more Pistons. It's okay. I can do that. So one of my key DFS strategies over the past couple of weeks where I've been on a nice little run has been targeting whoever the lead guard is or one of the lead guards against the Detroit Pistons. We mentioned this last week as well. You know, you look at past performances of lead guards or high scoring guards just going off against Pistons and racking up 50 or 60 fantasy points. That continued earlier this week. I believe it was on Monday night when Ben Mathurin had a giant game against the Pistons. Tonight, you've got Maxey going against Detroit. Maxey, this is actually his second game in a row that Philadelphia has gone against Detroit. And Maxey put up a dud last time earlier this week on Wednesday. He only had 26 fantasy points, might have been his worst game of the season, but it's because they didn't really need him to do much, which is always a risk when you're targeting a player against the Pistons.
Blowouts.
But earlier this season, Maxey against the Pistons had 64 fantasy points, one of his 2 or 3 biggest nights of the year. So I still like Maxey, and I actually like him as a low. I think there's going to be low ownership. There was on Wednesday. I don't think it's going to go up tonight because of the blowout potential. But Maxey could easily put together and have a giant game. He's under $9,000 on FanDuel right now, which is pretty affordable for him. Keeping with some of those like higher price players, salary players. We talked about Wemby earlier. Wemby's just been on such an absolute tear, averaging over 60 fantasy points per game over his past 3. He plays the Lakers. He just had a big game against them, 70.6 fantasy points. His price is going up.
And AD not 100% healthy, right?
Correct.
Well, I mean, AD could get a night off. LeBron got the night off against him against the Spurs earlier this week. AD's had a questionable tag for like 6 years now, basically since he's joined the Lakers. So whether he's healthy or not, I don't know. But I like Victor Wemby, even though he's going up in price. Another high priced option, Triple Hard J, Jaren Jackson Jr. He is also been on a tear. Another big man, just racking up blocks, treating Ken and I good in our NFBKC team. Back-to-back games with 40 or more points. That's not fantasy points, like actual points. He had 41 points against Dallas, 44 against the Rockets. He's got a rematch against the Rockets tonight. 8,900 on FanDuel. Give me some triple hard J.
Obviously, like that more of Desmond Bane is out.
Yes, absolutely.
They funnel offense through Jaren Jackson a little bit more. Is there anything, Ken, that you can tell us about this Celtics Magic game?
Only that the Magic have won the last 3 games against the Celtics ever since Eddie House called the Magic. So about this time last year was the 16th of December last year. Magic upset Boston, I think in Boston, and Eddie House postgame said, the Magic are still trash. And the Magic players actually said they saw that and motivates them for every other Celtic game. And they've got a 4-game winning streak against the Celtics. Celtics played last night. Looked really good, beating the Cavs twice. But they struggle with the high-scoring forwards of the Magic. And I'm a little curious to see how much Brown and Tatum are going to have in the tank to play defense tonight against Wagner and Pablo. So I wouldn't mind investing in some Magic forwards tonight, especially if the price is right.
Yeah, Boston only 6-point home favorites on the second night of a back-to-back, despite not losing a home game all season. So that is interesting note.
They're due.
One game I don't think we've touched on, but it's
on the massive over-under.
That's where I'm going. Yeah,
there we go.
259 right now is the over-under between Pacers at Wizards, and this is a game where Jordan Poole is a game time call, and probably the spread will move in the Wizards' favor if he's out. I'm not even really kidding. He has the worst advanced stats in the league by a mile, and he's obviously got terrible normal stats too. It's not anybody's shock.
Yeah.
Is this a game, Shannon, where you have your specific guys that you're targeting, right? That you just talked about. Is this a good game to just fill in? You got a little extra money remaining. All the options kind of seem even, but it's like this game might go, 125, 129. I just fill in, a little Bruce Brown, a little Avdia in my lineup.
Yeah, I mean, it's no surprise that the Pacers game's the highest over-under of the night. That's going to be the case every single slate that they're involved in. They, as of Monday night, I don't know what's happened since then, but they were the highest scoring team in NBA history on a per game basis through Monday night's game. And they play no defense as well. So you always know their opposing team's going to score a ton.
This could be the craziest Halliburton game, except could be a blowout by the third quarter, in which case they'd be smart to bench him. So that's the fear.
Yeah, the fear is the blowout potential, of course. And with Halliburton, like blowout potential with Halliburton is riskier than a guy like Maxey, in my opinion, because Halliburton on DraftKings, he's the second most expensive player on this slate. I mean, he costs $900 more than Booker, $1,200 more than Tatum, over $2,500 more, $2,400 more than Maxey. So, I mean, Halliburton's obviously been great, but if I'm spending up on that, I'm just going to go get Embiid, or I'm going to get Luka.
The game could be over midway in the third.
Yes,
right?
Yes, exactly.
TJ McConnell coming out just to help finish the game.
I think allocating some of that salary cap to a guy like Wemby on tonight's slate makes more sense than it does Halliburton. But that's not to say there aren't players to target in that game. I mentioned Ben Math earlier. He's still pretty affordable, really up and down, risky play because he's coming off the bench. You never know if he's going to play 35 or 25 minutes or if the shots fall in that night. He had 55 points against the Pistons, 55 fantasy points against the Pistons, followed that up with 15 fantasy points. So there is risk there, but he's 6,000 on on DraftKings, in that same range, a little bit cheaper on 52 on FanDuel. One guy that you mentioned now, that if he plays, I actually like him in this matchup. It's Jordan Poole. because I feel like this is one of those games where you have the highest over under of the night. His team could easily score 130. So like Ken's boy Kuzman and Jordan Poole, both solid options. They're gunners. They're going to be out there firing for tonight. How
about this though? If Poole's out, it could be monster minutes for the rookie Bilal Coulibaly, whose name I probably just mispronounced, but he's had a nice little run the last 5. Yeah, and he's probably he might be the only person on this roster we see 2 or 3 years now on the Wizards. I could see him having a nice night.
Yeah, 5,600 on FanDuel. He's had some solid games. I agree. I think he's a solid option as well.
Let's move on to Ken's old man rant, since he has a heart out. He's meeting some other old men for brunch or something. I don't remember exactly what he said, but why don't you take it away?
Arg! Starting January 11th, online sports betting will be legal here in little old Vermont. I'll confess I'm a little torn about this. I'm already pretty disengaged from the rest of my family, who all hate basketball. You add the possibility of having action on games, and we might have a real problem in this household. Losing $100 on a wager is one thing. Losing $100 and paying divorce attorneys is a whole nother level of financial pain. Gentlemen, help me show some restraint. And Vermonters, please visit betvermont.com for all of gambling.com's free wagering promotions.
Well, this rant reminds me of, I saw on Twitter, a financial analyst was on, I don't know if it was CNBC or something, talking about, I think there was the DraftKings stock, and it had mentioned that young men are having less sex than ever and betting on sports more than ever. And she practically blamed it on
saw that. Yeah.
Pistons money line parlays directly.
This pod causes less sex.
Hey,
I might be able to prove that.
It's good news. Good news for us old men, Ken. We're still getting plenty of action.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us on the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast. It is presented regrettably, I'm sure, by Underdog Fantasy. Ken, take us out of here.
Let's go back to Golden State, where Draymond Green said this on December 6th to ESPN's Ramona Shelburne. So December 6th, 8 days ago. Hey, when I'm not on the floor, it hurts my team. So for me, it's going to be more about, what do you have to do as a leader to save this team? You got to put your ego aside. You got to put your pride aside. You got to put, even in a sense, you as a human being aside, end quote. Draymond, talk is cheap. Attention passengers. This 3-car fantasy train wreck has hit the end of the line.